Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Chakra Way Meditation Podcast. And today I have a real kindred spirit with me. Really happy to introduce you to Veronique Ori. And Veronique is a yoga instructor. She's based in East Florida. And I love what Veronique does because she works with so many people are yoga instructors, and we need to kind of niche down on what our purpose is when we're teaching yoga. Um, and I love this because it's about intuitive movement and mindful awareness. Veronique has also written a book called Shine On and Off the Mat. And I think we're going to talk about all of that. So if you are interested in yoga, if you're interested in mindful movement, mindful awareness, and intuitive movement, this is definitely the conversation for you. So welcome, Veronique. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
You are very, very welcome. So I am really drawn to you because I think, as I said, I feel like a little bit of a kindred spirit. We're both yoga teachers with an extra mission on top. And my sense is that yoga is really developing from being just a kind of, oh, I'm going to go to yoga to have a good stretch, to understanding that yoga is really something way, way deeper and way more powerful than just going to a class and doing a down dog and a trikonasana. So tell me about your journey into yoga. First of all, how did you get into yoga? When did you first start practicing and all of that? Tell me your little story of how you got to where you are.
Mm. I used to tell this story where I would say, oh, I found yoga during Hurricane Sandy when I was living in New York City and the whole city shut down, subways, Broadway, everything, which, it's a really big deal if you're
In the city, yeah.
locking down millions and millions of people to stay in one place. And my roommate at the time had found out that the local yoga studio in Astoria, Queens, where we were living, had opened up, and he basically could have said anything. And I just wanted to leave the apartment. I felt so holed up. I had been what I thought was thriving in a city that demands a lot psychologically, physically, emotionally, testing your wits. And what the whole does, and we found this in different instances, right? When there's been a disaster of some kind, if there's a death or an illness, or there's a subway shutdown or whatever, depending on where you're living, say your car doesn't start or something just stops you. I find this is like the pause when you're in stride of the marathon of your life and you're forced to stop and you start to realize where the incongruencies are. And when I showed up to that class, I found it to be really telling. And I really love to tell this story because for people who may have tried yoga in different ways and it didn't resonate, I really think of it almost like dating or refining your palate of what the meal that you love is. It's what is your level of receptivity, the teacher, them speaking your language, as well as the movement resonating for your particular body in that moment. And so it's actually pretty magical for all of those things to sync up of, yes, this is where I desire to be. Not only that, but I want to be in this space for the rest of my days. And I really felt that full body yes after that class where I went to
Mm.
the front desk and said that I wanted to sign up for a monthly unlimited class. And I was there all of the days. And I showed up like a baby giraffe. Like I think a lot of people might see my physical practice now and think, these assumptions of, oh, well, she must have been a gymnast or a dancer. There are certain bodies that have a natural aptitude, or if you did some kind of flexible like activity before puberty, you might have a stronger inclination towards what we call kind of like the hypermobile ilk of person that is drawn to yoga because, oh, sure, I can put my foot to my head and it's not integrated in strength, but it's just a natural flexibility. But in our minds, we think, oh, that's the cover of Yoga Journal, or that's the image that I see on Instagram, and that's yoga. And what's so interesting is I felt for many years talking about, oh, this was my entry into yoga. It actually started in mindfulness 20 years prior, or maybe 15 years prior, at the Esalen Institute. I was assisting the dad of this family that I was nannying for. He asked if I would come and be his assistant. He led meditation retreats, and I attended, and it was silent, and it was silent meals where we would, take a bite, put the fork down, chew it to its completion. You're at a community table and you're just looking at one another and embracing the awkwardness of it all. And then you take another bite, and it's so disappointing. You take 3 bites and you're full because you're going so slowly. The food's so delicious and you just want to eat the entire thing. And I remember thinking, even like in my, young adult brain, oh, this feels really easeful to me. All I have to do is slow down and be quiet. And I felt like, oh, like I feel in flow with this. There wasn't resistance, but I think my mind was clearer than it was, fast forward 15 years ago, where I'm sort of in this yoga class and like in a deep reckoning with, oh, wow, not only is it all of these things that I've been kind of compounding and kind of like shoving to the side because I haven't had proper space to digest, so to speak. But then it's like all of the stuff from childhood starts to come up that you kind of like shove aside. And then it's like, oh, wait, but also there's all this intergenerational stuff that comes up. And then it's like, okay. And then you realize that the thoughts that you have of, I can do this shape well, or I can't, or like, I am never going to be able to do what she does or what he does, or, whatever those thoughts are, those habituations, they translate off of the mat. And so there was a moment where I realized, oh, if I actually believe that if I continue to show up with persistence, with dedication, letting go of the ego of, I'm going to stand on my head for the sake of taking a photo and showing people that I've accomplished this, but for my own self-empowerment, then what am I telling myself in regards to my life that I can or can't do? And how do I want to prove myself right or wrong? And so that really started to shift for me. And I started to feel like so much of my blocking was self-made. So much of what I was creating, almost like a pride about, was blocking me. Because at the time I was running my own nonprofit theater company. I was auditioning for plays, for independent films, for web series and things. And I was giving my power away left and right. My mood was so directly tied to, I'm receiving this grant from my company, or someone on the subway recognizes me, or I get applause after a performance. And then when the applause stops, I actually journaled about this morning, the silence is so loud. When there's a break in that exterior validation. And this is why it's so prevalent now in this age where I feel like we're kind of like growing out of the global pandemic of when we were in forced isolation. It's like now we're in this like hyper remembering of, oh yeah, actually we're meant to connect deeply. And the validation exteriorly, we do desire. There's so much talk in the spiritual space of it has to come from the inside, don't give your power away. It's both.
Yeah.
But I think the real piece that perhaps isn't talked about so much is coming back to yoga as that practice of union, of oneness. And part of our suffering is we think the validation has to come from this one person, right? The person that I'm in a romantic relationship, from my mother, my father. I desire my loved ones to love me in a particular way because I have expectations of how I wish for that to be received. But if we can almost imagine that we didn't have physical bodies, that there were spirits about that are all connected to source, whatever your belief system is, and we let go of it coming through a certain person in a certain timeline in a certain way, and we're open to receive, it shows up in the most magical way. And you can almost feel it, right? Like on the skin, it's like tingling. It's like, why would we ever believe that we weren't worthy to begin with?
Mm. Yeah. Well, there's a, that's such a thank you for that. That was amazing. But you're absolutely right. We for me, that comes from all of the cultural and developmental programming and all of the belief systems that we've taken on board. And I think you're right, because it seems incongruous to some that a physical practice of just being on your mat and striving to, not necessarily even achieving, an asana of one sort or the other, can actually open you up to all of those questions, to all of that inner dialogue within you. I have this very distinct memory, and and still do. Like, if I used to go to, because I was brought up in the Iyengar school, and so I go to the class, and sometimes, if you go to an intermediate or even a general class, sometimes the teacher would start by saying, right, everybody do a handstand to begin with. And I was like, I can't do a handstand. I can't do it. I used to be able to do it, and then I fell and I hurt myself, and now I have a samskara around it. And it's like, so I would start with this like big sensation of fear in my body and shame and all of this stuff. And a yoga class will help you, if you have the right teacher, to process through that. And then when you come out the other side and you realize, it doesn't matter if I can do a handstand or not. Like, it really, really does not matter. If it feels good to do it, then go for it all day. Enjoy it. A beautiful thing to do. But if you can't do it, it's not the end of the world. But some situations in a class you do. So you're so right. The space that is held within a class for that developmental, for that non-judgmentalness. Because I feel that there's a lot of people, and I'm sure you meet them as well. And you say you're a yoga teacher, and they go, "Oh, well, I tried yoga once, but I didn't really like it." And I'm like, well, you just didn't find the right teacher. It just wasn't the right class for you. There are as many different types of yoga and classes as there are yoga teachers, and you just need to keep going until you find the right one. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it's an interesting thing, isn't it? Because you start off with just this physical practice that you don't really know why it makes you feel so good, but you know that it does. There's something deeply connecting. It was exactly my experience as well. It's like, I've no idea why I love doing this, but I know that I love it. And it was years of me just happily practicing and getting on with my life, doing other things, before the real impact of it began to take place. And I think probably, I mean, I've been teaching for over 20 years now. It's probably only in the last decade that I've stopped just teaching a physical practice, that I've actually come into my own, and I'm now beginning to teach what the real meaning of yoga is, which is that union and that kind of coming home to the self, and that depth of understanding. So with your teaching, like, you've so obviously, it feels to me like this intuitive movement and mindful awareness part has kind of always been there. It felt like that was there from the off for you. Would that be right?
Mm. Yes, and it's a bit elusive if you're not tapped into some kind of movement practice. Like, You might see a scene in Bali of people at an ecstatic dance event.
Mm.
That could be very intimidating and off-putting to some. Of, what do you mean just move the way that I feel? You know,
Yeah.
sometimes I think for most of us with this hyper perfectionism, we want to do it right.
Hmm.
Just tell me where to put my foot, where to put my hand. I want to have that precision, almost like this Iyengar kind of
Yeah.
lineage
I
of,
want to
I want it.
succeed. I want to conquer it. I want to ace it. Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
it.
Mm.
Yeah. And so I love taking the edge off of so much rigidity, even though I think that, so much respect to lineages like Iyengar,
Yeah.
Ashtanga, where,
And there's a lot to be said for those, I'm really glad that I've got my roots in that. But
mm-hmm,
where I've grown from there and this is why I'm interested in you talking about intuitive movement because, now spend half the class going, just move your body how it wants to move. But I remember the very first time somebody told me to feel how I was feeling, and it actually made me angry. And
mm-hmm,
I'm like, I'll just feel how you're feeling. What kind of stupid question is that? In my inner dialogue, it's like I got really
yeah.
triggered something. But that was a learning experience, big time. That was like, okay, what's that about? Yeah, so sorry, back to the intuitive movement. Talk to me about that. How
Mm-hmm.
you introduce that. Yeah.
So I feel into the energy of the moment of where we are, as well as the energy from the person. So oftentimes I guide privately, one on one. And so I can ask, what are you craving? That's how I start each session. What are you craving? Which is different than what do you want to work on? That has a different quality than what am I craving? And
Yeah.
so I really love language because we can get really nuanced with where the attention is, where I love feminine fluid movement, which isn't it's not attuned to a certain gender, but it's more in that nourishing, nurturing kind of quality. And so I'm really attuning to I say our because I think the way that we are collectively affects the individual. So if we're all attuning to longevity practices, not living longer for the sake of living longer, but living a life well lived, where we have that innate vitality, where we feel energized and inspired and tapped into source in a way that resonates for each of us, then it's movement that facilitates a deeper connection to source. So it's like, how does this inspire me to feel stronger? How does this inspire me to tap into my desire to create or be of service, to be, connected to purpose? And so sometimes that movement is more of an internal movement. It doesn't need to be a physical, ecstatic dance experience. And in fact, a lot of my private sessions will be in stillness for the majority of the practice. We might be in conversation. There might be light stretching. I like to offer a Thai style massage, helping people relax the fascia, the connective tissue. And then we tend to an active flexibility and mobility. So it's not let me grab my toe and try to yank my foot as close to my head for the sake of this is what flexibility looks like from the outside, but rather how can I foster a way to move somatically that actually long term increases the range of motion, not just for the moment, but actually progressively over time, over sessions, over years. And I witnessed that. I have clients where when I first started and they sat what we call easy seat, like a cross-legged seat, which is a bit of a misnomer. It's not easy for most of us to sit cross-legged on the floor. Sometimes knees are up at the shoulders, like the hips just don't open in that way based on what the activities that we do in our life. And so little by little, we comb through that. Like I almost think of it like almost like massaging kale. You have to just keep kind of going at it, and little by little it starts to open up and you start to feel like there's space where there previously wasn't. But it does require that receptivity, because if we are walking around saying things like, I'm not able to do yoga because I'm not flexible,
Yes.
it's actually helpful to have resistance. If you show up to yoga and you're a hypermobile person and it's like really easy for you to fold in half, you don't have the natural ability to have resistance and strength to foster flexibility in a way that is intelligent. And there's like a real debate around this, because in the photo, it might look really beautiful, but where is the engagement and how are the joints aging with time? Because let's just agree that the hope is that we age. There's so much in the messaging about staying youthful, which I think the mind practice of that, and this is why the intuitive movement is so helpful, because it directly connects us to play. We want to be in that childlike wonderment. We want to be in awe. We want to fall on purpose, because that's where we learn. And then where is the thought when we fall? Where is the thought when we falter? Where is the thought when we're maybe not doing it in the way that we think that we should be? And so as we start to really allow for that space of being in play, this is a place where judgment, comparison, and expectations are unwelcome guests.
Yeah.
And I think we should definitely send a letter out. Judgment, comparison, and expectations, you are unwelcome guests.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And we're putting a no vacancy sign in front of our house or whatever building or space that we're in. Because if we can create distance between these three things, then we are really tapping into fundamental freedom. If we're showing up without judgment, without comparison and expectation, like I would really love every person to like have a pocket journal and just without judgment, write down every thought, every word, every action that is thread to these three things. And then little by little, we have the ability to actually reprogram the neural pathways where when those three things aren't welcome, then the physical body acquiesces. The mind that gets so fixated and gripping to a certain way, it softens its grip.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that it's very, it's such a powerful tool in terms of your pattern awareness and your thought pattern awareness, to write things down and to notice when your thought patterns have gone down that way. But I think as yoga teachers, it's really important to give permission for people to be exactly where they are with their bodies.
Yes.
And I've been teaching I've got one class that I love, and I've been teaching these ladies for probably about 18 years.
Wow.
So they all started and they were sort of in their 50s probably. And now they're all pushing 80-ish now, and they all still come to class, and they're still all able to do pretty much everything. The first couple of years was a bit of a tough one, but they stuck with it, but to see them now, and now, because they have this knowledge in their bodies, they have the poses there. It's now about them just giving themselves permission to do with those poses what they feel like in each and every day, and they'll still go, no, I'm going to do a shoulder stand, because if I don't do it, I won't be able to do it. And it feels good. I like the way it makes me feel. I'm like, go for it. But there's no expectation. There's no, this is how we finish a class. You always have to do it. It's just, this is the invitation to do it. Like, take this if this feels good, and don't if it doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
Listening to your bodies, because that's what yoga is all about, is that communication between the mind and the body. Because when we start to listen to the body, and this is brings us onto my favorite subject of chakras, is, when we can begin to communicate with the body, it has so much wisdom to share with us. It will tell us exactly what it needs. And for me, intuitive movement is listening to the body and going, what would you like to do? And it's interesting when I teach a class and I'm like, right, we're on all fours. Everyone's expecting to do a classic cat cow. And I go, no, just move really slowly and just let your body lead the way. Let your body just move in any which way it feels like going. And sometimes there's a bit of like, oh, I'd rather you just told me exactly what to do. But actually, I say, no, close your eyes. No one's looking. Just do what feels really interesting and juicy and satisfying. Like, please your body, make it happy, make it sing. Then it's going to open. Then it's going to start communicating with you. That's, yeah, it's a very powerful practice. So, you obviously shine on the mat. This is without a shadow of a doubt. So you're bringing this because you want to help people shine on and off the mat. This is the name of your book, Shine On and Off the Mat, which I love. Um, the mat, such a special place. So we shine on it. But so how do we take that off the mat? What's your philosophy there?
Gosh. So there's so much to be gleaned in harnessing the shine. And so if this feels elusive, you can think of shining as I feel inspired, I feel lit up, I'm in my element. So this is like you're tapped into joy that isn't fleeting, but it's just like pure contentedness. And so,
like having a good hair day every day.
yes.
That feeling that you're just like, yeah,
Yeah.
I feel good about myself today. Yes.
And it's such a great practice. I love this, how it extends to everything. So, there's so many exercises where it's like, journal about your dream day. Where are you? What are you doing in the morning? What are you doing in the afternoon? What are you doing in the evening? Who's with you? What are you attuning to? What are the thoughts? What are you eating? All of these things. And so rather than being, like a dream, like a far off something that maybe one day, if I play my cards right, I'll have that one day, but rather I really love the invitation of what is the essence, meaning what is the feeling or the emotion that you have in that dream day. So you go through that exercise. Where are you? Who are you with? What are you doing? Just as a baseline. And then rather than thinking, okay, now I have to, sell my place or, move or, I need to quit my job or I need a new relationship or anything like that. Or maybe you're like, oh, actually I live my dream day every day. Great. So that's very present. We think about what that is. And then it's like, what's the emotion? And so for me, I always come back to a day that is connected to freedom, where I'm not beholden to a timeline. I wake up because I choose to wake up at a certain time, and I make coffee. I tend to my face, I tend to my body. And this is actually what I do every day.
Yeah.
I don't catapult myself out of bed feeling like I'm rushed. I'm not looking at technology until I've resourced myself. And for me, that looks like quiet moment in nature, some kind of connection to source. I'll want to learn something. So maybe I listen to a talk or I read something. I move my body somehow. It's actually very rarely I roll out my mat and I'm doing a formal practice. These days I let my dog out. I get on the rowing machine for 5 minutes. I do some handstands, and then I might do some hip mobility. And so it doesn't have to be an exhaustive thing. And, I just share that as inspiration, take what resonates of like, what would feel like, like this is a really great morning. Like, I love this morning. And then, and only then, do you pour into technology. But maybe you don't need to on this day. Maybe on this day, you stay fully unplugged. And what's so important about extending the shine from on the mat to off the mat is really the line between on the mat and off the mat. Like none of it has to be on the mat actually, right? Like I can do breath with movement while I'm brushing my teeth, while I'm waiting for the kettle to boil, while I'm walking my dog. All of it is integrated if you want it to be. I could certainly wash dishes and just like rush and like just want to like get to the next thing, or like the washing the dish. I mean, this could be really meditative, just like, oh wow, like I love this soap. It's like Clementine.
What I'm feeling, what I'm hearing, is that the inspiration of what yoga has taught you on the mat, and what it's taught you there to accept yourself, to go at your own pace, to listen to what your own needs and desires and cravings are, and just follow that through into the rest of your life. So you have an essence of what you're craving to experience, in your case freedom. I think, in all honesty, like that's a bottom line for most people, like to have the freedom to decide when they're going to get out of bed, and freedom to decide when they're going to plug into work, or to, and I think that so much of life feels restrictive. It's like, I need to be at work by this time. I've got to sit in the car, and I know I've got to, I'm going to be stuck in the car, and I'm going to be stuck in traffic whilst I get to work. There's only those two places that I can go and choose to get my snacks from, or my lunch from. The freedoms that I'm afforded are limited by life, and those life choices that feel like, you've got a choice of one or two, or maybe even none, is very limiting. It's very restrictive. So freedom is, I think, something that yeah, I think we can all really, really connect with. But you're saying, like, if we can take this state of mind and find this freedom within the small choices. So I have the freedom to take my own lunch in, so I can eat exactly what I want. I have, and maybe you change your mindset around, I have to go to work. No, I get to go to work. I get to drive a car. I'm lucky I've got a car. Like there's these kind of small paradigm shifts that we can make within our own mindset, that I think will really help you move towards this shining off the mat, which I do, I love this idea. I think it's really powerful.
Yeah, and another way to think about it too is, how do I better be a steward to my future self and the lives that I touch? And so in that regard, I'm only showing up when I feel fully resourced, right? Where I feel like I'm able to give fully and be fully present. And in order to do that, there's a little bit of that outside in, inside out, where I am only putting clothes on that reflect that essence. So for me, that essence is earthy elegance. And so what's so powerful about this, and I love this in terms of the conversation of really tuning into that shine, because if there are objects in your space that are dulling, like I imagine, like, one of those old fashioned dimmers on your wall, if there's anything, clothes, objects, random artifacts that are not in alignment with your shine, your current version of what that is for you, it's such a beckoning to be in that continual letting go process. So if I'm being in a very deliberate season of this, I love to hang clothes in the back of my closet after I've washed them. And so if I skip the thing in the front, I know that that's not in alignment with my current self. And so I must let it go. If I'm feeling resistant to that, I might let it go one more pass. But usually if I pass it 3 times, I'm not in alignment with it anymore. And
Mm.
so little by little, we can just it's so empowering, actually, and in that space of freedom to get lighter. It's such a great, almost a revolution to the culture of more means better, of seeking more objects or more money, or we want more whatever. And to, hearken back to that first meditation practice of the silent meal, we realize actually when we slow down and we're in the mindfulness, how little we actually do need.
Yeah.
It's this liberation and great disappointment that, a few bites, and that's quite satiating.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. I think it's the society is shamefully obsessed with having things and stuff and surrounding ourselves. And sometimes if all of those things and those stuffs brings joy, then then that's good. You hold on to them. So like for example, in my office, I have this painting here that's propped up. You can't see it. It's a and my husband can't bear it. He's like, it's just so sappy. It used to be hanging in my bedroom in my grandmother's room, in my grandmother's house. And it's so soppy, but it brings me great joy, so I don't want to get rid of it. So I keep it in my office. Like it's a real,
Mm-hmm.
when you're saying that, I'm like, this is great because actually in this, I've surrounded myself by things that really resonate and make me go, oh, this is me. This makes me
Mm-hmm.
feel good about myself. And you're absolutely right. These little signals to the self are reinforcing. And it's
Mm-hmm.
also a way of going back to what you were saying earlier about like, no, I am worthy. I'm worthy of surrounding myself with these things, of having things that bring me joy, that make me feel like myself
That's
and
right.
worthy of living my life according to my authentic self and things that
Mm-hmm.
resonate with me. And I think that that's
Yeah. It's so wild because when we're awake to that line of thinking, then we start to be in an orientation to choose each piece of what is constituting our life,
mm, mm,
so that little by little there isn't anything happening by default. And you can kind of check yourself on this, of if there's like a certain order that you habitually do something. It's fun to do with sort of habits that maybe don't have such high stakes, like, oh, I typically brush my teeth, then I floss, then I do mouthwash.
mm.
And so if you play with switching the order, or maybe you have like, a different order that you do your certain nighttime rituals of, oh, I wash my face and then I put this oil, or, whatever the thing is, just every now and then do the order differently. Every now and then, if you're just simply walking from one room to the next, maybe you skip, or you do a little twirl, or just add a little bit of whimsy, and like, oh, how can I just shake this up a little bit? And
Yeah, those
then
circuit breakers are really, really powerful. Like, and you're
mm-hmm,
exactly right. Just like skipping or like singing in the street, like doing something that you would never normally do, and you do it, nothing bad happens. The world doesn't come to an end. Like, it's everything's fine, but you feel slightly differently about yourself. And
mm-hmm,
that's the power of it. It's 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 a way really of kind of like reminding yourself that you're alive. There's a kind of vitality to it as well,
mm-hmm,
I which I love. It's brilliant. There's a really, really lovely it's a really lovely tip that it's a really easy thing for somebody to do. Just go, okay, I'm just going to do something differently. And you don't have to do it in front of anybody else. It's just something that you do. Just skip down the corridor. I love that.
mm-hmm. Hmm.
So, Veronique, I want you to, because we were talking before, because I'm very interested in how Veronique has this incredible membership. So, just briefly, tell everybody a little bit about your Shine On and Off the Mat, the membership that is there, because you've got a wealth of resources that is quite mind-boggling.
Thank you. Yeah, the real impetus behind it is wanting to answer the sedentary and the loneliness epidemics. There's so many instances where we're sitting where we don't have to be, like we could be in a different position for this conversation, whether it's you and I or anyone listening. We could be on a walk, we could, just kind of shift, we could be in that intuitive movement, cat cow in our seat. And also, so often I think when we're going through hard times, or what we often regard as the in-between times, where it's, for example, the moment this podcast ends until whatever we're doing after it, there's a very common modern thing that happens where we'll likely look at our device. Oh, what messages did I miss while I was focused on this other thing, right? And so, what the hope of the Shine membership is that we can shape shift the way that we are in the in between, or when we're in waiting, and we let go of the illusion that we're separate, and we use the technology to bring us together. And it really parlays to what we were talking about of what we habitually do. So how are we living by default, and how are we living by design? And so I wrote this book, Shine On and Off the Mat, as a guide. It's a coffee table style book that has short stories through a 52-week themed practice, where the themes are on purpose, timely, and timeless. So it begins let go as the theme, which was certainly very timely, March 2020. And I think today, whatever you're listening to this, you could probably readily think of things that you're practicing letting go of,
Yeah.
as you would, 6 years from now, and so on. And so, as we allow for space to continually practice on it, we get to be excavators of our own psyche, of our own emotional landscape. So, how our thoughts originate, getting to the subconscious, you could really pour into it as deep as you crave to. You could also find the practices just as they are. So there's a 3-part video series that accompanies each story, which is a guided meditation, a vinyasa style practice, and a yin stretch practice. So you could do all 3, and that would be a 60-minute practice. And there's actually a lot of benefit. You could do that practice every day for the week, or you could look at your schedule and say, oh my gosh, it's a really full schedule. I'll just do each one once and I'll spread it throughout the week, however you want to orient it. And then within that, there's also a music playlist. So you could listen to the music with the practice, or what my clients really love to do is they'll have the music on while they're doing errands and chores, because it gives a different kind of quality. If you're folding laundry and it's like this coffee house kind of singer-songwriter vibe, you could almost feel like you're in one of my classes, and it has that energy of we're in community and we're in movement, and also you're tending to your home in some way, or you're on your commute in some way.
I mean, music is such an important such a very powerful way of shifting mood, of shifting atmosphere. And, it completely changes your atmosphere when you've got a sort of, soft, whatever music, you can change it, whatever. So, yeah, I love that you have that within that, because I've
Mm,
not ever talked to a yoga teacher who curates a music playlist to bring that atmosphere. I mean, they probably do in their classes. I don't know. I've never taught with music, so I don't do that.
mhm.
But I love that you do. I think that's amazing.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and it's so interesting because, when I practiced in New York City, the music was very high intensity meeting the high intensity. Granted, I was doing a lot of power vinyasa
Mm.
classes, so it had a certain kind of style of music that accompanied it. And then when I moved down to this little beach town where, it's an older community, this is a very snowbird kind of town, it was like, okay, this is not the energy of this place.
Yeah.
And that's part of this intuitive movement is I'm attuning to where I am, to the people where I am, which it wouldn't be appropriate for me to be playing the same music, right? It's like if you've ever done a long drive and you are listening to the radio and you're kind of like losing that station as you're going into the next town, and you might be kind of hearing this song and this song. When we arrive to the new place, we want to be listening to the new station, that resonates, which is still my energy, but it's honoring the energy that I'm in. And so, and what's been so interesting is when I guide privately, which is predominantly how I'm with people these days, apart from retreats and, special offerings, I predominantly am in silence. And so it's more in that group setting where I would curate playlists for that class. And so I like the music being separate from the videos that I have. So if you did want to do the practices in silence, you're certainly welcome to. And then if you did want to have music, I go back and forth. Sometimes I'll practice on my back porch and I just love to have the soundscape of the birds.
Yeah.
And then sometimes if I'm feeling like I'm in a grief space, sometimes grief shows up at my door and I'm all of a sudden processing something again. Sometimes I love to have the music in my ears to help change the station, not in a superficial way of get over it, but sometimes it's like, or the hope is that you start to develop that discernment when you're ready to shift away from a certain mood, and changing the music to reflect the energy that you want to be in is a really helpful tool. So I really love that. And so oftentimes it's less about here I am than rolling out my mat and I'm doing movement with this music. But oftentimes I might just jump up and down and shake and like scream. And
Got to follow what the energy wants, and this is the whole point, isn't it? Is listening to what the body wants to do, and then allowing yourself, giving yourself the permission to do it. And I think that's a very big part of it. I think that so many of us don't give ourselves permission to actually listen in to our bodies, to actually follow what we want and what we need and what we crave. And I think there's a lot of people out there who you could ask, what are you craving? And they'd be like, I don't know. I'm
yeah,
not a clue. So
yeah,
it's that invitation that the yoga mat gives you to tap into what your body wants, because your body will communicate pretty quickly with you about about various things on the mat. And
yeah. And to be fair,
have that conversation.
sometimes my clients, they'll say, oh, whatever you think.
Mm,
And
yeah.
and then they'll psychically communicate with me what they're craving, and
Yeah.
then
It is very satisfying, isn't it? When you get to the end of a private class and you've said, what do you need? And they go, I don't know. So you go, okay, we're going to do this. And they go, God, that was exactly what I needed.
that's right. Yeah, yeah,
That moment. Yeah.
yeah.
So Veronique, tell people how they can get hold of you and reach out to you if they're interested in shining on and off the mat. Tell them.
Yeah, I'd love to connect. You can learn more about my offerings on my website, yogawithveronique.com. If you're on social media, you can find me on Instagram at Veronique Ori. And if you're interested in reading, I have a Substack. You can find me on there, Veronique Ori, and there's different ways to communicate. I really I love the opportunities where we can listen and learn like this. And I really, really encourage if you're listening, if anything resonated, to reach out and be in conversation. It's so tempting to just be an observer and be listening. And there's such great power to taking action.
Yeah.
And so I think more and more, it's like if we're in an active space with our life, right? We're not living by default anymore. We're the hero or the heroine of our own story. We're not living by these old programs, but rather we are here because we actually want to connect. I really do encourage you to send a note. I would love to know what resonates with you, because that gives power. It actually sends momentum for other people to do the same. And when we can have language around what it is that we're craving, then we can better call in that to meet us exactly where we are. And that's the whole Shine mission, is that we're able to radiate in a way that feels inspiring for others.
Yeah, no, I love that message, and it resonates very clearly with me today because I've just been recording my latest podcast, which will have been out by the time this comes out, which was about the law. I've been doing one on the universal laws, and today's one, or the next week's one, is about the law of gender, which is all about masculine, feminine. And so, yes, there's that, you've talked a lot about that beautiful, intuitive, nurturing energy of feminine, but we have to have the action. You have to take the action because the feminine and the masculine have to work together to create something. That's the
That's
beauty of
right.
the law. So, yeah, what you've just described there really resonates in this moment. I love that you did that. So thank you, Veronique. It's been an absolute joy chatting with you. You're
Thank you
fascinating
so
and
much.
have a beautiful energy. So thank you.
Thank you, you as well. I really appreciate it. I'm very grateful. Thank you.